Hi everyone, welcome back to Tuesday Tips for Leaders of Volunteers. I'm your host Dana Litwin, and this is coming out on July 4th, which is Independence Day for the United States, where I'm filming this, and kind of relates to founding of a country, founding of organizations. This week's topic is founder syndrome and dealing with either very entitled or very entrenched in their ways longtime volunteers who somehow are causing a problem, or other people are finding it more and more challenging to work with them because they are so set in their ways and they're not willing to change or update or modernize with the rest of the agency's culture or practices or technology or however that applies. Now, founder syndrome is extremely common. It's common in tech startups. It's common really across all industries, but particularly in nonprofits. Founder syndrome occurs when a founder struggles or refuses to change gears and adopt a new mindset, approach, or skill set as the organization grows and its strategic context changes. And if this person is in leadership, like an executive director or a board chair or running a department or running a major project or a team, typically founder syndrome means that rather than making way for a new leader to take the organization to the next level or the project to the next level, this founder, this very entrenched or entitled person, tries to hang on to their power and their position. This also ties into this week's Tuesday Tips, a very popular webinar I have called Hold 'em or Fold 'em: How to Inspire, Fire, or Move Challenging Team Members, especially volunteers. And this is a little preview, but if you want the full webinar, just get in touch with me. All my contact info is here on the video channel and in the description below. Go to my website, all that good stuff. So the archetype of the entitled one is usually, not exclusively, a very long-time volunteer, probably a founder who does good or even great work, but they're just not easy to work with. They consistently overstep their role. They might be arrogant or condescending. They might be disrespectful or dismissive of other team members, paid or unpaid, who technically supervise their work or that they need to work closely with to accomplish their goals. And they just come across as rude or annoying or frustrating to work with. Now, the solution to someone being very entitled in their long-time role, volunteer role especially, is to have very clear boundaries, very clear communication, very clear accountability if the conversation that you have with them has to do with change this behavior or these consequences will occur, up to and including moving them off the project, moving them out of a department, or asking them to leave or retire or dismiss them. So that's one part of it, but the other part may not seem as intuitive. The other part to kind of dealing with or managing a very entitled person is actually to give them a few ego strokes here and there, to make it clear that you do respect and understand the good work that they have, the knowledge and the skill set and the experience that they've built up with so many years with the agency or as a founder, the gratitude that they founded this agency and got everything started. So that's kind of a balance that should be achieved to get through to this person so they don't just kind of shut out new ideas and think that they're only being challenged. This type of person really thrives on that recognition and that praise, and usually deep down they are very, very invested in the agency and the success of the agency, but they just only have one way of expressing that passion or that interest in success is kind of comes across, or maybe just is, my way or the highway. They just might be very stubborn, set in their way, strong-willed person. So they either, most of the time that I've had to have these conversations, the person either doesn't know that they're having such a negative impact, or there's gotten to be so much personal hurt feelings, beefs, misunderstandings, feuds, that they no longer care because they have just come to believe that without them everything falls apart. And that's just not a good place for any organization or project or department to be in, where you're so reliant on one person, whether that's a paid person or a volunteer, that's just not good sustainability and overall operational management to be so dependent on one person. So I'll tell you a quick story of, I was in my final hiring interviews with an agency many years ago, and the hiring panel asked me flat out, they said, hey, we're going to call this person Gina that we're talking about, not their actual name, but just for the sake of telling the story, we'll call her Gina. And they said, hey, we have Gina has founded the agency. She's been a past board member. She's a donor. She's been in almost every single volunteer role for years at a time. She's done incredible work, and no one can stand working with her. She's loud, she's abrasive, she's curt, and it's just very, very difficult to get her to change her ways or go along with anyone else's idea. So if we hire you, can you please fire her? I didn't make that promise. I didn't promise to fire anybody I haven't met yet, and you should never do that. I asked for, can I have 6 months on the job to get to know her work, to get to know her communication and personality styles, and let me see if I can come up with a solution so that we can keep her wealth of knowledge and experience that does benefit the agency, and find a way for her to change her ways and for other people to understand, what her ultimate goals are to help the agency, so that maybe we can find a balance. And fortunately, I was given that opportunity. So with Gina, what I discovered was that she had to fight for everything. She was of a generation, the silent generation. Now I think she's in probably close to 90 at this point, but she's of the generation where she had to fight for everything as a woman. She had to fight in her career. She had to be strong-willed. She had to push really hard. She was from the East Coast, so she had a much more direct communication, no BS, not suffering fools style of talking to people that wasn't really cutting it in this kind of like Northern California crunchy organization vibe, cultural vibe that was going on here. So it really was a few different factors, but I realized that she had never technically violated a code of conduct. Like, people would be annoyed or frustrated with her, but she had never called people names or said or done anything that was harassment or bigotry, and her conduct was always, in her mind, to the absolute highest benefit and goals for the agency fulfilling its mission. So I realized that, and this is what helped me get these kind of archetypes down, that she really, really was interested. And when I started to have very frank, direct, clear conversations with her where I was stayed emotionally neutral, she didn't realize that it was as harmful to the rest of her team as her behavior had been. So she changed. We had a little kind of probationary period for the next 6 months. I did communication trainings, not just for her. I had some more conversations, but also for the rest of the volunteers that I inherited in this role and staff members. So I started to do a little more work leading the volunteer department for that agency, and everybody improving their communication and understanding each other's communication style. And that benefited really everybody in the long run. But it meant that, by the time I left that agency many, many years later, she was well-loved, well-respected, had won a number of awards from mayors and city council members for her outstanding volunteer work, and we had achieved that balance by just having these really honest, clear boundaries, and also balancing out that, we do recognize what you've contributed to the success by helping found this agency and being an original board member and going through and doing all of these wonderful volunteer roles over the decades. So that was kind of a success story. There's plenty of other stories I've had with clients where someone has also founded a department, helped found an agency, helped found, a Friends of organization, a nonprofit to complement a government agency or another community organization, and they are too set in their ways and they're not willing to change. And it's gotten to the point where they're so far backward in their thinking that it is crossing lines of conduct in the code of conduct or ethics or respect or non-harassment. And in those cases, we've sometimes had to just straight out dismiss people and just understand that, the agency is moving in this direction and you're stuck back here, and we've tried to work with you, but you're not willing to change, so we're going to have to move on without you. But other times, I've kind of struck a similar balance where that person is given a little more responsibility to teach other people, to help new generations of volunteers or even paid staff members in that department learn their knowledge, or we've had them codify their knowledge and help write it down and appreciated their expertise, and then gotten to a point where it feels it's either their idea to retire because they feel like their knowledge has been passed down appropriately in a respectful way, or that they don't want to participate in that at all, and it has been entirely about their ego and their sense of power, and they are, put into an alumni status or just a donor status, or have some other role that is less in person or less involved than they previously had been, where they're ruffling feathers so that the rest of the team members and the rest of the projects can move on without them. So hopefully you can find a balance that I did with Gina, and everyone ends up in a win-win-win situation with someone with founder syndrome or that volunteer that seems like they're entitled or entrenched in their ways. If you give it a little bit of a chance and have a really honest conversation with some accountability, then maybe everyone can come out better for it overall. I hope you enjoy these Tuesday tips. I hope you have a safe and fun and not too loud 4th of July holiday if you're celebrating here in the States, and we'll see you next time with more Tuesday tips. Take care.